Welcome to Public Health Matters, where we talk about matters of public health. I'm Bobbie Bagley, Chief Public Health Official and Director for the City of Nashua's Division of Public Health and Community Services. And I'm joined today with ROB DEPICE of the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority and ALI SECOU, who is I'm going to have you explain your title because it's a little bit longer, but Community Engagement at New Hampshire Housing Finance. And we're going to talk about things that are housing related. We know that housing is a public health issue, and so our guests today are going to speak about the importance of creating opportunities through home and community and the services that are offered out of the New Hampshire Housing Authority and Finance.
Great.
All right, so Rob, why don't you start first? Rob is the Executive Director and the CEO of New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority. So tell us about the organization.
Sure, thank you, Bobbie, and we're so happy to be here with you. New Hampshire Housing is an independent body, but it's set up by state law, so sometimes it's confusing. People think it's part of state government, but it's not. But the state set it up with a mission to promote and finance and support housing solutions for the people of New Hampshire. And we do that with a lot of different programs. We have a home ownership division, which works with lenders from around the state to help people achieve home ownership. We've got a multifamily division, which helps developers, nonprofits, and for-profits, again, all over the state, to create and preserve affordable rental housing. And then we've got an assisted housing division, which works just like a public housing authority, like Nashua Housing Authority or any of the 16 others around the state. But for areas that don't have a local housing authority, they administer the Section 8 or Housing Choice Voucher and some other related sort of rental assistance programs. And Ali can talk about this more, but we also have a small team that does a great deal of work to gather data and present it in a way that's informative and accessible and helps stakeholders and policymakers, whether it's the local or state level, make good informed decisions about housing.
Yeah, well, thank you. And Ali, tell us a little bit more about your role as a community outreach and engagement person, because it's really important for people to understand what the services are, how they get connected to them, and what are things that people need to know.
Oh, thank you, Bobbie, for having us. And as Rob was saying, when you hear about New Hampshire housing, we do a lot than what people think. I've said that earlier. When we talk about housing and we say New Hampshire housing, people see the Section 8 voucher. But Rob just highlighted the overview of what New Hampshire Housing does. Mm-hmm. So my role at New Hampshire Housing as the manager of community outreach and engagement is really to be in the community, to educate, bring awareness, and share the resources that are available, and also create that relationship and partnership, the trusted relationship that whenever there is a need, they have somebody to go to that can relate that message to the senior leadership.
Yeah, great, thank you. So I see our housing situation in New Hampshire, even in particular in Nashua, as a crisis. And this has been going on now for over a decade, where we have individuals who would like to be able to buy homes that they can't afford. We have folks who would love for people to buy homes so they can get out of some of the rental units so that they can rent. And then we've got individuals that are on fixed incomes, whether they're elderly or they're receiving Social Security, and so they're on fixed income. So talk a little bit about how those different population groups of individuals can be served through the programs offered at New Hampshire Housing.
Yeah, so the needs of the community for housing are diverse, and I think you're touching on some of those diverse needs.
Yes.
And so different programs that we have serve people sort of at different points in their lives, and so, for example, the homeownership program, it's unlikely that somebody who's on a fixed income and very, very low income is going to be able to achieve homeownership.
Right.
But there are folks who are in rental apartments who might not feel like homeownership is within reach, but with the help of some of our down payment assistance programs, we have a first generation program that provides additional financial assistance. People who might not have realized it can achieve homeownership. They can use it for a 1 to 4 family home, and in some cases get some rental income to make something possible that they might not have realized. As you said, that can free up rental units, and providing some of that vacancy in the system is really important, because the housing vouchers can be an important sort of safety net to help people who are on a fixed income or very low income afford their rent, but they can't use that voucher if there's not a vacancy in an apartment building in their community. And so It's all part of a big, sort of complicated ecosystem, and all of those programs are important.
And what is very good about that program, as I was saying earlier, the 15,000 assistance, it's modest, but it goes a long way for people that have never owned a home or that are trying or don't have even that support. You can combine other resources with it to still get that home ownership to the reach that you want it to be. So I think that's why I was emphasizing on the collaboration and partnership. Many people come together to make sure that people are getting what they need and, of course, the quality home that they need.
So how does that work? So does a person call someone at New Hampshire Housing to get the application, and then someone walks them through that process? What type of situation do they need to be in? Like, what do they have to demonstrate a certain income and their ability to, once they purchase, be able to maintain the mortgage? Like, tell me about how that process works for an individual or for a family, couple.
Sure. So are you asking specifically about the homeownership programs?
Yes, the home ownership program.
Yeah. So
and then we're going to talk about rental.
Okay. The best way is actually probably to go to our website first if folks have access. And there's actually a special website just for homeownership. It's gonewhampshirehousing.com. And there's a feature called Build Your Team. And so we're not a direct lender. You don't get a loan from New Hampshire Housing.
Okay, that's good to know, right, how that works.
Yeah, but lending companies like CMG Mortgage or banks like Merrimack County or St. Mary's, work with New Hampshire Housing and our products and can offer first-time homebuyer loans at rates that are a little bit below market and can come without down payment assistance. So, and often realtors will have relationships with lenders, making sure that you've got a team that can offer you options, including first-time homebuyer loans, if that's what you're interested in, is important. And so our website has a directory of those programs. You can also call our office, and the phone number is on that flyer you have on the website. But those folks can help you get connected with a team that will help you navigate the process.
Yeah,
so when I'm in the community talking about it, I will always say to people, because you don't choose your bank and go to your bank, because it has to have bank that do business with New Hampshire Housing.
Okay.
And Rob mentioned some of our partners, and Bangora Saving Bank was one example that I wanted to give here, because somebody was looking to buy a home and they reached out to me, and I said, okay, the first step is maybe you go do your training, because talking about partners again, the NeighborWorks home teams do a training on home buyer training.
Okay.
And then from there, you identify the banks that do business with New Hampshire Housing so that you can benefit from that.
That's awesome. And so first-time homeowners can apply to this particular program.
And if I could just note that it's actually an IRS definition, because the programs that we offer are created in the federal tax code, and the definition of first-time home buyer is actually not as strict as one might think. So if you have not owned a home in the last 7 years, I believe it is, then you can qualify as a first-time home buyer.
Oh,
Yes.
that's actually that's good clarity to know about this as well. And then you also mentioned the support for individuals, because we have individuals that are on a fixed income. And so these individuals may not be able to participate in the first-time home buyers program, but they may need some assistance with rent. So can you tell me a little bit about how the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority helps support individuals that may need to get set up with some rental support?
Sure, and New Hampshire Housing doesn't administer emergency resources, and so we can't substitute for, the welfare department or the CAP agencies. We direct folks to those resources which are more geared towards emergency situations. We, as Public Housing Authority with the Section 8 or Housing Choice Voucher Program, we can help people get signed up for a voucher, but as with almost every housing authority in the country, there's a long wait, 6 or 7 years in a lot of cases. And so we'll work with folks to make sure they're signed up, make sure they know what their options are in the meantime. And then once they get to the end of the waiting list and they have a voucher, we'll help them work to find an apartment that meets their needs within a landlord who's willing to take the voucher.
So if I live here in Nashua and say, for instance, I have a voucher, is my voucher Can I use it anywhere in New Hampshire?
If you applied to New Hampshire Housing for that voucher, then yes, you may. If you got your voucher from Nashua Housing Authority, you can use it in their jurisdiction, which is Nashua and I think a few surrounding towns.
Oh, okay.
And there is even a program that you have a voucher and you can keep your voucher while you are building your wealth to get your home ownership in reach, where you can get FSS. That's a program, right, Rob?
Yeah, there is a program for people who have a voucher and are in an apartment to become homeowners if the voucher can cover the mortgage payment for a modest single-family home or condo.
So there
And
is
is that-
many avenues.
So is that information that's shared once a person connects with someone at New Hampshire Housing?
Yeah, there's
And
some
it becomes like
information-
a plan. So what would you
Right.
like? Is it one of these conversations where someone at New Hampshire Housing says, so what is it that you're interested in? What would you like to do? Because we have this option, we have this option, we have that option.
Yeah, I wish we were joined by somebody from our assisted housing division who does this work every day, but I think most often when somebody's getting signed up for the waiting list or getting their voucher, their first priority is to find an apartment that they
Right,
can, where they
yeah.
can use that voucher. But certainly our rental assistance managers will speak with them and work with them on what their plan is, and that plan might include home ownership, and so they'll help them understand that it's called the Voucher Assisted Mortgage Option, VAMO, which is, there is also more information on our website if folks are curious about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I do have the website information here because we definitely want to make sure that we share this, because there may be someone who's watching or who is going to watch this segment of Public Health Matters and want to know more about how doors can be opened to them for home ownership, or even about the voucher program. And so you mentioned 16 housing authorities. And so if I fill out an application in Nashua, does that allow for me to also use that application in the other places, or do I have to fill out an application in every place?
Yeah, there's no sort of one stop for every housing authority, and at least not yet.
Not
And
yet.
It's certainly something that would be nice to achieve in the future.
All right, yeah, that's something that we definitely want to help reduce some barriers for folks as well. So can we talk about some of the projects that you have assisted folks with? And so I know that here in Nashua, we have the, we've got Marshall Street apartments, we've got, what do we have down on Central Street? Monahan Manor,
Yep.
right? So those are some of the rental places that you guys have assisted with. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because those have been really exciting for us to have open up here in Nashua.
Yeah, those are great projects, and I think the fact that there's so much happening in Nashua, both affordable and market rate, is a testament to the good work that the city has done to provide opportunities for, both for-profits and nonprofits to create housing opportunities. So you mentioned the Marshall Street apartments and Monahan Manor. I'll add to that list 249 Main Street. These are all financed with the low-income housing tax credit, which is a federal program where we allocate tax credits to the developers, and then they can sell them to generate cash to pay for construction. That housing then sort of looks and feels and functions very much like a regular apartment building, except that they've made a binding commitment to rent to people who are income qualified for rents that they can afford. They've also committed to accept housing choice vouchers if people have them. So it's not the same as public housing, where
Right.
every resident pays 1/3 of their income and the government pays the rest, or the housing authority does. It's more like what people think of as a sort of conventional apartment building, except that you don't have to worry about your rent going up by $300 when the building changes hands or something like that.
Wow, that's actually really good.
So that's very stable.
Yeah, I was going to say
Yeah.
that's stable, and that helps people feel more secure about their housing, so they don't have to worry about, if the rent does go up $100, $200, $300, where am I going to be?
Right.
And that's a real issue for folks, right? We actually have worked with a number of individuals in our community who unfortunately are unhoused at this, particular time, and we're always trying to help them get connected to either landlords, get them signed up for vouchers. And we know that you mentioned the waiting list could be up to like 6 or 7 years.
Right.
Let's talk about the vacancy rate, because that's been, an issue that we're also finding for folks. Even if they have a voucher, if there's no rental units available, that makes it kind of hard for folks, and that brings in the complexity of this whole issue of housing as a crisis for us here in New Hampshire and across the country.
Yeah. We think of a balanced and sort of healthy vacancy rate as 5%, and it's been a decade or so since New Hampshire has had 5% vacancy in most of the state. It's hard to pin down exactly what the numbers are in sort of localized areas because it's hard to get survey responses and really good data. But whether it's 2% or 3% or 1.5% or 3.5%, I think it's very clear that it's a very difficult rental environment, and particularly for folks at the lower end of the income spectrum. We have seen some good market rate construction in the state, and so rents at the higher end of the market are not going up in the same way that they were a few years ago. And I think Ali sees this in the community with the folks that he's working with. There's a lot of real hardship still at folks who are looking for a more modest apartment and home.
Yeah. And so because your role is statewide, Ali, what are you seeing across the state? Because Coos County, Hillsborough, Rockingham County, it all probably looks very, very different. And so when you're going out into the community, you have the opportunity to provide education to community members, to municipalities about the services that are offered, and then even about policy changes that may be needed.
So our conversation in the community is really trying to make sure that folks do understand that there is some connection to be made here, and the relationship that when you have a question, we can answer your question, and the resources that are available that we mentioned, few of them, from the voucher to the $15,000 down payment assistance. But I do think that what we want to highlight, as you said earlier, there is no doubt that there is housing shortage. So it's a demand and supply. So what can we do to educate people in general to understand that the housing that being built benefits everybody, not only the few. And as Rob was saying earlier, when you are in the lower income side of it, it's even harder, because if those affordable housing is not being built, guess what? Not everybody can afford the market rates.
Right.
So I think the information sharing and the awareness and the education is where the key is. And of course, the listening aspect of it, because I think you cannot resolve an issue if you are not hearing what people's problems are. So we are really trying to listen and hear, listening with a heart to understand what the real issues are. And the problem can be a norm, right? The problem can be from the zoning aspect in a city that want to develop or in a city that don't want to develop, to a conversation, to legislation. What can we do to adopt some good policies that can help us build more? Or community members also knowing that here is the resource, because some of us don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
So I think that's really whenever we are in the community. And here in Nashua, I'm part of the Cultural Connection Committee, where folks come together, like-minded, in the engagement team to try to listen from childcare to healthcare to whatever, the mental health, so that people will share the resources and the best practices out there.
And there is a best practice around housing, right? We want people to be housed. We want them to have housing stability, as well. There's a concept now, and it frightened me when I first heard about this. We need to increase density in the, in the downtown and in the city areas. Talk about the importance of that, and why is that a best practice now, especially here in New England, when we're used to our quaint towns and our quaint cities, and people have the feeling, no, I don't want that type of building and that type of structure, in the area that I'm used to things being a certain way. Why is density important in the inner city area?
Well, it's funny when you say we're used to our quaint towns and cities, villages and downtowns. It's actually true that if you think about what picture comes to people's heads, whether it's downtown Portsmouth or Peterborough or Nashua, a lot of these places were built before zoning imposed minimum lot sizes and setbacks and things like that. And some towns and cities have done a great job of recognizing the places that we most love. We've zoned them out and modernizing their zoning codes. Nashua has done a good job with that. But many others haven't, and so they look at density as oh no, well we want, that's not the New Hampshire way. We want our community to stay the way they always have been. But zoning is sort of an experiment that's been in place for a few decades. It doesn't mean it's the best solution forever. I mean, the zoning codes that we currently have. And in many cases, I think we're finding that they're creating problems in terms of sprawl that and infrastructure demands in terms of the roads and water and sewer when you spread things out so much that are really challenging for communities in the long run. So to get to your question about why density is important, I think a lot of it has to do with making use of the infrastructure that we have. When you have more homes per acre, you don't have to build as many miles of road or maintain as many miles of road and curbing and things like that. Car trips are shorter. In some cases, you may not need a car in every case. And also, think about the size of homes that are created when you build an apartment building versus a single-family home on let's say you have a 3-acre minimum lot. When you think about New Hampshire's demographics, we have more and more households that are just 1 or 2 people.
Right.
And in most cases, those people, some of them live in 4-bedroom houses, but they can't afford and don't necessarily want to move into a 4-bedroom house. So what should we be building to meet that demand?
Right.
It's a lot of smaller apartments, condos, townhomes, and things like that.
And density also, if you look in the aspect of economy, I think when people live and work in the same area, it's easy, right? Or transportation. There's many people, they don't even have another way to go further to work. But imagine if they are in a city that their housing and their workplace, or even if the transportation is given and supported, what that can do.
Yes.
So I think there is many benefits that come into the density, especially in towns like, in city like New Hampshire.
Yes, yes, thank you. And that's a concept that people have to adjust to, right? And so we know that change happens. We've seen demographic changes happen all, for the past couple of decades. I've been here now going on 3 decades, in the state. And so, as change happens, as demographic change happens, as you talked about economic things and jobs change, and people do want to be a little bit closer, to their workplace and their home space, so they don't have to drive as far. And so that all makes really good sense. When we talked about transportation, and so we don't have really good transportation here in the state of New Hampshire. And so I guess the density piece would answer that as well, because then people won't have to go as far, drive as far. And then people can bike more, right? Some of those other things are also addressed with that as well.
So you added the environmental aspect of it.
You have to, right?
Yeah,
When you want to preserve certain things, you have to include that in there as well.
And
If
you
there
want
were,
public transit, you can't really support a good public transit system without density.
There is not density.
see, look at that as well. So if there were 3 key things that you wanted to leave for our viewers when it comes down to creating opportunities through, housing and community, what would those 3 things be?
I'll do one and then you can do the second, okay? I think, a lot of people are aware that there's a housing problem in New Hampshire, many more so than a decade ago. Still, there's a lot of people who, if you bought your home, 10 or 20 years ago, it's fine. Maybe the property taxes have gone up or insurance, but you're more housing stable than folks who aren't in that situation.
Right.
But I would encourage folks who see it in their life or in the life of people they love to get involved. You can make a difference in New Hampshire. You can make a difference at the local level and also at the state level, advocating for, better and more modern zoning codes that allow for reasonable opportunities for housing in ways that your community is, comfortable with and can get excited about, because it means good things that people who love the town that they grew up in can stay there when they age in place and things like that. So getting involved at the local and state level would be my first thing. And
What do you think, Ali?
I think I'm going to lean on to our mission, because our mission said we promote, which is really what I'm trying to do in the state of New Hampshire, where we travel and talk to people about housing and the resources that are available when it comes to housing. So I will just say that it's always good to bring awareness and education so that people know not only the rights, but what is available, where to start, what to do, not only at New Hampshire Housing, but even in the respective communities, because I think sometimes the issues that affect us on a daily basis, it's at our local level.
Right.
From city council to town meetings, what can we do to help people understand that the decisions that are being made there affect you and affect you directly? So I think giving people the tools they need to understand the consequences of bad bills or bad policies or bad decision, or giving them the tools to understand what to do to promote and be good advocates for good bills and good policies. So I think that's one. And I think the resources that we shared earlier, I cannot stress it enough to really share the home ownership aspect of it, the 15,000 that New Hampshire Housing does to help people reach that home ownership, and the collaboration, the partnership that we are available to listen, to partner, and of course, to create that way to get the solution needed for all people in New Hampshire.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. I want to thank you so much for being here with us, coming from Concord to join us here in Nashua to talk about the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority, the opportunities through home and community, the resources that you have, that you offer as well. I do want to share the website, or at least have you share the website. What is it? Yeah.
www.nhhousing.org.
nhhousing.org.
Yeah, and then go newhampshirehousing.com for homeownership.
Yeah, and so these are some great resources. And it's really important for everyone to understand that there's opportunities that can be created for either housing, ownership, or for getting the vouchers for rental assistance. I want to thank you for being here. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Ali, for being here as well. I'm Bobbie Bagley, and I'm reminding you to have a great day today and a better day tomorrow. And I'll see you next time on Public Health Matters.